Hola, mi gente. Welcome to La Mesa with me, your host, Carlos. Welcome to the new year. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope everyone had a great holiday. Hope everybody had a lot to eat and started the new year off well. And welcome to my latest episode. As always, thank you to everyone who's supporting, following, listening in. Thank you to those who are commenting and sending your love, text, emails, phone calls. Appreciate all the love and support. Thank you very much. So let's kick it. Let's get into this episode. Today's episode is on a topic that I'm still learning, and I think we all learn on a day-to-day, but it's on the topic of responsibility. So it's cultivating responsibility, right? And we're just going to get into a in-depth dialogue on what accountability is and how do we use accountability in our day-to-day, from family, friends, our loved ones, to even using accountability at work. Taking personal accountability, we'll talk about how accountability impacts relationships, things that we can do to kind of challenge ourselves in accountability, right, to be better, as well as where accountability kind of falls into the cultural aspects of things, right, how you were raised, things around your community, how that plays a big impact in your life. We're also going to look at defining that accountability, what the definition is, and kind of just talk some things through, give you some stories, and see how we go. But Dan, thank you again so much for joining. I appreciate the support, and let's kick it. So, cultivating responsibility, right, and talking about what accountability is. I just want to kind of touch in my intro and give you just a brief, to me, in terms of what accountability is from a personal and professional growth, right? And I think accountability plays a big role in my day-to-day life, right? Especially if we can start with your career, right? Is when you're in work and you're doing something in your job and things don't go your way and you try to shortcut it, right, to try to get it resolved, and it doesn't happen, right? It doesn't work out to how you expected it to come out. You know, sometimes we try to shortcut and things fail, and we have to step up to the plate, right, and take that ownership of why it didn't work. And I know there's many times in my job, especially in my area of expertise, where I thought I knew better, right? I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I was trying to get into some method to do a shortcut to try to fix an issue. And even though you Google and you research and you YouTube and you think that you got the answer, you end up breaking something and you got to take ownership for it, right? So sometimes when I was making changes in the middle of the night to try to resolve an issue and we lost access to a server or I lost access to a database, it's, I had to own it. And I'd be up all night trying to restore databases and trying to restore things. And it became a pain. So I had to own that accountability on that because, I owned and managed that environment from a infrastructure, or I owned and managed everything that kind of kept the lights on for everybody's mobile devices and phones and stuff. So those are kind of how important it is to kind of own it and see it through, because sometimes when we tend to fail, and at least I won't speak for everyone, but when you tend to fail at something, you tend to not be good at it, right? You kind of just throw your hands up and be like, I'm not dealing with this. And you forget that you started that process, right? You started working and managing that environment or that situation. And now you just kind of want to walk away from it instead of owning it and trying to figure out a way to resolve and fix it. So that's how I look at it from a career, professional side of things. And then from my personal, I look at it in life, right? With your family, with your kids. Sometimes discussions, right? Disagreements. Sometimes we don't take the blame. We don't own what we say. We don't own how we speak to our kids. We don't own how things can change in an instance when you're having a conversation and you're having a disagreement, right, with your siblings. But I use it more like with my kids. Sometimes I don't get it right all the time, and I know my kids think they're right like 99.9% of the time, but sometimes I don't get it right all the time, right? So I got to own it and realize, oh man, maybe I should have taken some time to pause before I responded and regurgitated my response to them that probably could have made them feel a certain type of way. So the importance of owning it sometimes is even within your own home is when you're talking to your kids and you're trying to establish that relationship, is sometimes just taking a step back and be like, you know what, you're right. I'm gonna own what I said, and I'm gonna apologize, right? So I think that's how I look at how important accountability is, because it impacts every aspect of your life. And sometimes not owning something and not taking responsibility for the words or for the actions or for what you meant to say or didn't mean to say can impact you short term, can impact you long term, and it can impact you in many ways, right? Mentally, emotionally. So that's my intro into my thought process on accountability, right? And then we think about what is the accountability. I mean, there's different definitions, right? I think you could look up what the word accountable. You could look up on accountability on the Webster's dictionary. So that's what I did, right? I looked up the word accountability and to try to get some definition in terms of what that word really means, right? So what accountability means. And accountability means is the quality or state of being accountable, especially an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. Sorry. So it's willing to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. Now, if we really take a step back and really read those words and kind of take it all in, right? How many of us sit with maybe owing someone an apology? How many of us sit with maybe not owning up to some things that we may have done? How many of us sit and wish we had someone in front of us that we needed to apologize to and not own up to potentially disrespecting them, mistreating them, maybe saying something that was hurtful, or maybe saying something that you thought was joking in a joking manner and kind of impacted them? How many of us at work lied to kind of get through something, right? Or even lied in life, right? To try to get out of something without owning your mistake or owning your error, right? I won't even say a mistake, your error. Or owning that part of you that is imperfect, right? That still has some imperfections there, right? So willingness to accept that responsibility or to account for one's actions. So let that sink in for a little bit while we discuss and talk more in depth about the accountability word. And as we move on, right, we talk about personal accountability, right? Let's talk about exploring the impact of holding yourself or holding oneself accountable for actions, decisions, and personal development, right? So if you sit here and think about that, right, what impact does not being accountable or holding myself accountable play a role in those actions and decisions and how you grow as a person? When we talk about that, right, talk about the things that happen in your day-to-day life, your way you grew up, struggles in your day-to-day, whether it was in school, right, being picked on, your life, your friends, not having friends, maybe not being the most popular person in school. How is it that you handled, or how would you look at handling owning and being accountable for potentially maybe your reaction to a lot of those things, right? Maybe you don't have the friends, or maybe you don't have the popularity, or maybe you don't have the right tools, right, to kind of get you through your moment in life, right? And you decide to do something and hold that anger and maybe lose it on somebody and um, not own it, right? Not own the fact that you let yourself get to a point where you became a loose cannon, right? You said something to someone and you hurt their feelings, or you your attitude caused you to lose your job, or the way you responded to your kids or responded to your parents as growing up. What did that do to you, right? How did that help you? How did that teach you or give you those teachable moments on how you did it, right? Uh, and for me, I think when I talk about those holding myself accountable, I think about growing up as a kid in Williamsburg, where I didn't sit still and I wasn't the easiest going kid growing up, but not so much because I was a troublemaker. It's because I had to defend myself. I was a very skinny boy who had two cracked teeth and was a very vulnerable person. People used that as a weakness, and I had to step up. And when I would get in trouble, I would tell my mom and my dad I had to defend myself. I had to defend myself because they were picking on me. I was holding myself accountable, but there were moments where I would try to get out of it. And we talk about not sitting still. I talk about the letter homes. I mean, how many of us got letter homes sent to their house when they were kids, right? And I would try to hide it, and I would try to forge my mom or dad's signature. I would look at how my mom would sign her name, and I would forge it, so that way my parents didn't know I was misbehaving in school. So growing up as a kid, what I did, I would forge a signature and bring a letter home. And the funniest story was that one day, my brother needed crayons or markers, I think it was, and he decided to look in my backpack, and lo and behold, I had a letter home. I believe it was fourth grade. And what he do? He takes the letter out, and goes to my parents and flashes it to my mom and dad and says, "Oh, look what Carlos got." And it was already signed because I had signed it while I was in the bathroom, put it back in the envelope, and was going to give it to my teacher the weekend. And what was that? I got in trouble. I got the butt whipping that I deserved because, again, I was trying to not be accountable for my decisions. So when I talk about how that helped me as a child, is helped me realize that I need to own up what I do, right? And if I do own up to my mistakes or to my flaws or to my errors, I got to own it, right? Because those are my decisions, right? And what that helps me realize is that I know I'm not going to get it right all the time. But even if I do mess up, even if I do slip and fall, even if I do take a trip, that it's okay. I'm going to learn from it, right? I'm going to learn that owning what I did, owning what I did to stumble can never happen again, right? So those are what you got to look at from a personal development and how those decisions are made. And I can talk about, like I said, I mentioned in the beginning in my introduction, is like even at work, right? When we try to take shortcuts or we try to do things that, we're not going to think we're going to get caught on. And what happens? You make a change. Like I said, I make a change on the fly in the network. I'm thinking, oh, no one's on right now. So if I make a change on the code, everything's going to be fine. And lo and behold, everybody's phone stopped working. And then my boss is getting a phone call, and then everybody's getting no emails, and I'm getting paged at 11, 12 at night, having to work all night to try to restore what I did because I tried to take a shortcut and I tried to think that, okay, this would be the fix because, again, I read online. I'm like, oh, this could be the fix to make a database conversion faster. So that's how I own or learned how to own my my messes, right? My flaws. It's, holding myself accountable. One thing I do is I hold myself accountable even to today, because at the end of the day, there's no, I mean, what is the word everybody says, right? What's in darkness would always come to light. So no matter how much you try to hide it, or no matter how much you try to not be honest and honorable to yourself, right? You got to hold yourself accountable to the things you do. Even if you talk to someone and you say the worst thing to them, you got to own it. Because sometimes your words are impactful. Your words do hurt. And you have to kind of take that accountability. You got to own it. And you got to be like, yeah, you know what? That's on me. That's on me. But remember, holding that personal accountability is really for you, not for anybody else, right? That's the one thing I want, if anything, to take away from this part is the accountability piece, and being accountable and owning that is for yourself, right? It's not for anybody else, because at the end of the day, what they're going to do, no one else is really going to look at it and be like, oh yeah, he's accountable. They're going to be like, oh good, or maybe they are, who am I to judge others, right? In terms of how they think. But always know that when you're taking that personal path on that, owning your mistakes, owning and taking ownership of the things that you've done and the things that you're doing, and how you make that into a routine for yourself to help you grow, and whether it is kicking habits, right, from drugs and alcohol to maybe addiction to fast food, to maybe eating things you're not supposed to. Think about those things, right? Think about what is it that first is triggering me to do it, right? Making me make the decisions for the actions. And how do I help myself kind of take myself out of that equation so that way I never do it again? And it's owning it, right? Owning, it's ownership. It's always going to be your personal ownership, right? To hold yourself accountable. Not waiting for somebody to tell you, oh, see, I told you, I knew you would never do it. Because how many of us sometimes hear that, right? How many of us sometimes, when we take ownership or when we're doing it, it's I told you, I knew it was you. I knew you were doing it. I knew it was that, right? So, very important to understand that when you hold yourself accountable, it's really for you. There's going to be a lot of haters. There's going to be a lot of people talking. There's going to be a lot of people chirping and in your ear, or even sometimes in your face, right? But it's owning it and being okay with owning those flaws that you may have to make yourself better. Because at the end of the day, that's your goal, right? Is to kind of own it and to be like, yeah, I messed up, and to feel good about it, right? To feel like you had that weight of the world, or that 500-pound gorilla on your shoulders that you've probably been holding on to say, hey, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to learn from this, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to be accountable, and I'm going to take it in stride. And then we talk about accountability in relationships, right? And how that plays a role in building and maintaining it and making sure that the relationship is healthy. And when we talk about family, let's start with family, right? How many of us have siblings that we bicker with sometimes, and maybe we don't take ownership for something that we said, or maybe hurt their feelings, or maybe didn't invite them to a dinner, or didn't invite them to a party, or maybe weren't considerate in a conversation because we felt that they didn't need to be part of it, right? Sometimes we feel that way. Sometimes we feel like I'm having a conversation with mom and dad and you don't need to be part of it. But maybe they played a role that they needed to know, because guess what? In families, what? Chisme and gossip and all that gets around quickly, right? So sometimes in families, we make mistakes, right? We say the wrong thing, or we say things inadvertently because that's my sibling, that's my family, you shouldn't take it personal. Don't hold on. I don't know why you took it personal. It was a joke. How many times does that happen, right? Oh, it was a joke. I was kidding. And it was something offensive, right? That we may have said to insult or offend a fellow sibling, or uncle or aunt or mom or dad, right? Or even our grandparents, right? Sometimes we say the wrong things to our elders, and we don't hold ourselves accountable for what we say or with our actions, right? Grandma and grandpa want to spend time with you, and you just like, I don't want to spend time with them. They're old. They're boring, right? So when I talk about families and how accountability plays a role, is that we have to sometimes take a step back. And I know the rule of thumb is that you got to bite your tongue, right? Not say those things, but sometimes we have to be honest. But we also have to be accountable and hold ourselves accountable for what we say, right? And how we say it. Because sometimes I know I can't read minds, and sometimes I can't read what someone says to me via text and read body language or how that person speaks or what their intent was. I don't think many of us can do that. But I believe that when we speak and how we maintain those relationships with our family members is crucial and important, because at the end of the day, that's really what we have as family. Some people go like, well, my friends are my family, right? I don't have a good relationship with my siblings. I don't have a good relationship. But that's still family, right? You still have to kind of look at it and own where your place is in the mess, right? Because if there is a mess, and if there is some sort of conflict, or there is some sort of disagreement or a moment, where within that mess, or where within that disagreement, where within that break of conversation is where you lie, right? Where's your part in all of that? Where's your part in what you need to do to find what you didn't do that made the mess, right? That made that mess within the table. Owning it, right? Owning it, okay, maybe I did come off aggressive. Maybe I did come off a little bit snarky. Or maybe I did say something that wasn't right. But I was defending myself. I'm not going to stay quiet, right? How many of us take that defense? I'm not going to stay quiet. I'm not going to let somebody just talk to me and my family, be however they want. They're not going to disrespect me. But meanwhile, you're giving that same energy, right? You're still pushing that same MO. And the motive is the same, right? You're not gonna get your last word in. I'm not gonna get my last word in, and I don't want to talk to you anymore. But how many of us don't own that part that we brought to the table to make it messy? It's always going to be the other person. It's always going to be they're the ones who started. No, they owe me the apology. And sometimes you're right. Sometimes they do owe you the apology. Sometimes it is about getting that apology, but also it's us owning our mess, owning what we could have said differently, right? What we could have done differently. Maybe instead of approaching it from an emotional perspective. And I think emotions play a huge part in how we speak, how we react, whether or not we're cursing or whether or not we're in a heightened state when we speak. If we don't take or hold ourselves accountable for those actions, right, and the decisions that we make, right, how do we grow? And I think that's one of the key areas where I constantly work in as well, especially when I have my kids. I think it's very difficult when it comes to our children and from a family perspective, right? Because it's a different day and age today than when I was growing up as a teenager and as a kid, right? There wasn't all the social media. There wasn't the kids having so much access to technology that their data that they get is so fast. And when they're talking to you about something and you know the answer, because of course, you know, I'm a dinosaur here, to what my kids call me. They'll argue with you, and then I'll argue, and my tone will get loud, and their tone will get loud. And then I got to remember that it's a conversation, first of all. It's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about having a conversation. So I get caught up in a lot of that. Sometimes I have to check myself and look at my actions and the decisions I decided to make when I speak. And then I say, you know, if they see me responding this way, how is it that they're going to respond to other people and act with other people in the outside world, right? So I'm constantly checking myself and that, and definitely holding myself accountable, you know. And the way I hold myself accountable with them is, hey, I was wrong. I was wrong for the way I came and spoke to you. I was wrong on the approach. And, you know, I'm sorry that I got loud with you. And you know what that does? Is that they recognize it, and they recognize where they were wrong, and they apologize to me. Or maybe I just get a hug. But either way, I take whatever win I can get. But those are how I deal with my accountabilities within family. And then when we talk about partnerships and relationships, whether that be with your significant other, wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, or even if you're in some sort of partnership relationship, is accountability is being transparent. I mean, I can't tell you how important that is, right? Is being transparent. That's being accountable. Because if you're hiding things and you're just giving off small information here and there, how is that going to work? How is that relationship going to grow? How are you going to keep fertilizing and feeding that flower and keeping it alive if you're withholding data and information? Also, accountability is owning your mess, owning that you messed up, right? Owning that you didn't do the right thing, that you said the wrong thing, that you insulted them, or that you didn't give them the hug when they needed it, and instead of you giving them the hug, you scolded them, or you turned your back on them. I think, and I believe that in relationship it's key to hold yourself accountable, because the same way two people fell in love before they got into a serious relationship is the same way two people should still be in love 5, 10, 15, 20, 35, 30. And how many relationships do I know that are still in that, right? That they still are grinding and they're right or die. So transparency is key. Being straight up and honest, not worrying about what the other person's going to think. Because at the end of the day, you're living with this person. You're entrusting in this person to give you and nurture you, right? Be that nurturing person, be that trusted advisor to you. So when I talk about accountability in relationships, especially in partnerships, you got to own it. You got to be straight. I mean, not sugarcoat it or go around the corners. That when your feet are put to the fire, it's just being straight up and honest. And also, like I said, is not trying to go behind your partner's back or your husband or wife's back and doing things that is not agreeable to them. There's nothing that indicates or speaks to your character or to the relationship. So it's holding those accountabilities to say you're wrong, right? To own it, but also being accountable and asking for forgiveness and giving forgiveness, right? And having your opinions. No one can say you can't have your opinions and speak, but it's also speaking in a respectful manner, right? Not being disrespectful and degrading the person, calling them names, treating them like crap, understanding their love language, right? Understanding exactly what they need. In relationships, it's critical, and it's sometimes hard because nowadays, like again, social media, people get caught up in things that people are posting, and they start to believe it, and they start to think, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to have, and this is the type of woman I'm supposed to be with, or this is supposed to be the type of man I'm supposed to be with. But meanwhile, we don't gut check ourselves and hold ourselves accountable for our behaviors and the things we do and what we bring to the table, or even all of the trauma that we're bringing, right? We don't hold ourselves accountable for all the stuff, all the baggage we bring to relationships, because guess what? We haven't healed. We haven't figured out what that's like. We haven't figured out, oh my God, how do I treat somebody else the way I want to be treated? Instead, we trauma dump, and we then hold that person hostage for the behaviors, and we don't hold ourselves in a place of, wait a minute, I'm not giving this person all of my mess. It's not fair to them, right? And we look at people to fix us, and especially in all aspects of relationships and in partnerships and relationships from a matrimonial spouse, right? What do you do there? And that's a good question. And then we talk about friendships, and this is one area where I really lack, and I'm learning that this week. It being a very difficult week for me in terms of honoring your friendships and holding those friendships at value, right? One of the things is I lost a lot of contacts with my friends, especially a very outgoing person like myself that likes to be an extrovert, right? I like to talk to people. I'm in front of people. I think I can make friends with a wall if I needed to by having conversations, but I definitely lack that accountability in friendships, because I feel like, why am I the one calling them? Why am I the one always looking for them when sometimes that's what you need to do, is kind of reach out to them. How do you know, or what do you know if someone's going through something? Or sometimes maybe you say something, you do something that does impact the relationship, and you're not realizing that your actions, right, and the decisions you made and what you say and how you react broke the relationship because your ego, your pride got the best of you. And when I talk about friendships and owning that for myself, is just even calling. I feel like I sit here, I can think about all the friends that I've made over the last 20 years that are like brothers and sisters to me, that I haven't synced up with or spoken to in years. And then I think about this week and the things that have happened this week, and I say, my God, I need to own that, because just as much as everybody has a phone, I have a phone too. And I can send a text, and I can send a message, and I can send a DM to them and be like, hey, just thinking about you. How you been? How's the family? How's the kids? How you been? How's life? Right? And that's one thing where I lack, and I'm holding myself accountable today, because that's something that I don't ever want to lack of, is being accountable in my friendships, right? Especially those that I've built very strong bonds with over the years. And I think that's important to me, because sometimes, like I said, we make mistakes. We're human, right? And when being human is we flawed, right? We're very flawed in the things we do and how we speak and how we act. And life does sometimes take its hold on us. But I still feel like sometimes when things are good and we say to ourselves, oh, I was thinking about this person. I think at the moment you think about the person is the moment you need to kind of react and kind of reach out, because you never know what someone's going through. You never know what's going on in their lives, or you never know, right? You never know what can happen. Then what do we live with? The regret. I never reached out to this person. I should have, could have. And I think when I talk about the friendship aspect of responsibility, and I think it's in every avenue, even in relationships and family and with your kids, those regrets come in heavy, right? And they hit us, and we feel like the guilt kicks in. And that goes back to holding accountability from a personal perspective, right? You got to own it. It has to be about you. You can't put it on anybody else. You can't put that on anybody else's shoulder, because it's about you. It's about how you react, how you engage, and how do you use that to help yourself grow, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't want to feel like you're alone. You want to feel like you have nobody in your corner. But that starts with you. That starts with analyzing and looking at how do I resolve this? And sometimes even owning it is never going to fix it. Especially when we talk about family, especially when we talk about spouses, especially when we talk in relationships that it just didn't work, right? But at the end of the day, you owning it, you taking that accountability, remember, it's for you. And that personal development and personal growth. So that way, wherever you go, and whether it is you still talk to your family members, whether it is that relationship with your spouse or your partner is tarnished and is never can recover, that you're still able to grow. So that way, if you do move on and you do decide to marry someone else or be in another relationship, at least from a relationship perspective, right, and partner, you're able to not bring some of that old you into that new life you're given, right? And then when you talk about your siblings and you talk about your family, right, it's still being cognizant of how they feel and how they're feeling, and maybe not saying anything, but still being responsible for your stuff, right? Owning that, the pieces the way you've made the mistakes, and say, okay, I'm coming into this with peace. So I'm coming to this with a clear head. I know I'm not going to ever talk to this person again. I know I'm never going to see this person again. Maybe my kid doesn't want to talk to me, but it's okay. But I'm still going to give this love, and I'm going to still give the support to them, because at the end of the day, that's my accountability. That's me owning it. That's me knowing that this is not who I am. And sometimes, like I said, you just got to be strong. You got to be like, I'm not talking to this person anymore, and leave it at that. But owning the parts that when you review and you reflect on those things, that you're saying, you know what? Yeah, this is on me. It is on me. At least I'm going to own my part. And whether you accept my apology or whether you accept my response, you know what? It's okay, but at least I own my part. It may not fix it. It may not make things better. It may not change the way you feel about me, but I need to be okay with it. I need to be okay with knowing that I am doing what I need to do to never do this again or never bring this back to my future or to my present. And I think that's when we talk about accountability in relationships, we have to be very, very aware, especially the people around us. And then some people be like, oh, but that's just the way he is, or that's the way she is. Leave them. That's the way they are. And then that becomes that you get isolated. You become someone who maybe they don't want to hang out with, or someone that they don't want to invite, or someone I don't want to talk to because I can't talk to you because every time I speak to you, you get aggressive. So things that we need to really be aware of, especially when we're engaging in different aspects of relationships in life. Then we talk about the cultural piece, right? What about the cultural piece? Being raised in a Hispanic household, being raised in a minority household, right? How is accountability addressed there, right? And the way cultures perceive it and how it's built into the social frameworks of your life, right? And then I talk about me being Hispanic or Latino, right? Being raised in a Latino home. We were always had to own it. Because one thing growing up as a kid, and for those who know me and know my family, if my dad got a phone call, you got in trouble, there's no way you lie or get out of it. Because if my mom called my dad and my dad found out that we did something wrong, my mom's not a liar. And there's no way I'm going to lie out of that one or get out of it. So my dad came home from work. Let's just say that I was going to bed nice and warm during that engagement with my father. But nonetheless, it's a lot of households, especially in the minority community, especially the old school. I think you were taught to own it, but then there's some of us that it's hard. It's hard to gauge, especially in a cultural aspect of things, right? Because sometimes families like, not my son, not my daughter. They would never do that. They'll never do that, and brush it under the rug, knowing that, yeah, my son's a deviant on the street selling drugs or selling guns, maybe getting girls knocked up or leaving them and having multiple kids but not taking care of their responsibilities, right? Or my daughter's, she just doesn't care about herself, She comes in and out of the house. Maybe she's going through something, but, it's as a Latin culture, sometimes it's overlooked. Again, I don't know about the other cultures, but growing up in the Latin culture, you see that a lot, especially when spouses are cheating and they go to their families. Their families are their bread and butter. Instead of them being like, you need to own it. You messed up that marriage. You need to own it. You need to face whatever consequences are coming. You need to own it. Right? So I think when it comes to culture, sometimes it really depends. If you're a mama's boy or you're a daddy's girl, or if you're the favorite or if you're the only child, it's hidden. It's something that's it's engraved. Like, my kid would never do this. Why would my son do this? Why would my daughter do this? It's held to a different standard. Maybe behind closed doors, you'd be like, you did this and you need to pray, but not in my household. Growing up as a kid, we had to own it. There was no way of getting around it. There was no way of trying to make it seem like you were the innocent one, because if you got in trouble, you got in trouble. But it was with love. I think my parents taught us to own it very early because they didn't want to raise deviants. They didn't want to raise people from, like they call it, de la calle, from the streets, right? They wanted you to be respectful. You had to ask for blessings, or when you walk between two people, you had to ask, excuse me, when two adults were having a conversation. So there's a lot of aspects from owning it. But I'm curious to know how many of you who are listening have families that way. That someone in your family that had kids or had cousins or brother or sister that were doing things and they were like, no, not them. They would never do it. Never hold them accountable because they were the saints. They were the angels of the family, right? So those are some of the, to me, one of the major cultural aspects of it, right? Is never bringing those things to the table, and they don't talk about it, or it's taboo. Don't bring it up. This guy has 5 kids, but you don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. We don't bring that to the table. And you're like, but he's just a rolling stone. That's what he's doing. He's everywhere he goes, he's gonna have a kid. Or my daughter hanging out with the wrong crowd, and oh no, but she's good. She's home all the time. No, or things like that, right? It's not to add a guy or girl or however, but as an example, how in some Spanish, and at least in some Spanish households, it's looked at, right? Because that's my kid. My kid would never be, you look at it in the news, kids getting shot, and you look at things and people going to supermarkets. Oh no, he was so innocent, or driving vehicles and crashing into people and taking innocent people's lives because they decided to drive like maniacs. And then you see people in the news, oh my God, he was such a loving person. But there's no accountability for driving like a psychopath or getting a gun and going to school and shooting up kids. No one wants to own it. So within a cultural perspective, where our culture is really in a place where, depending on the actions, sometimes it's never owned, and I instill that in my kids. Like, you make a mistake, you got to own it. If you don't tell me when the thing happens, if you don't tell me, oh, Dad, I messed this up, I won't be as mad. I'll be upset, but I won't be as mad. It's when you take forever to tell me, and then you remember, or it comes to you like, Dad, I made a mistake, or I did this, or you see this crack on the wall, or you see I broke this, and I'm wondering who broke whatever it is that was broken when I found it. And that's when I get upset. And that's when I tell them, you need to own it. The moment it happens, you have to own it. And I know that it's challenging sometimes, but if you own it and you step forward, you have to, take it. Like I said, in my house, when growing up as a kid, it was not something that was taken lightly. It was, although we try to get away with it. I mean, as a kid, I know I tried to. My siblings, so my brother and I try to get away from it a lot, but there was no way. As long as my mom knew, and my mom was the witness, there was no way it was a lie. So it's funny when I think about it today. Then we go into challenges. Like, what are some of the challenges of being accountable? And I challenge that question to you all, and I'll probably add it to my poll there of what are the challenges you feel are challenging to you in accountability and being accountable, right? What are some of the obstacles that you face when you're trying to confront, or what is some of the strategies you use to try to overcome some of those obstacles from being accountable? Whether it's fear, whether it's being hopeless, being despair, being nervous, your anxiety. Oh my God, I don't think I can tell them, or I don't think I can face this because I don't know the outcome, but I just want to lie about it. Or maybe just lying, maybe because you don't want to believe that you did something so bad, or that you made a mistake, right? Or maybe it's because you don't know the action, or whatever the outcome is for your action. What if I tell them? Well, how are they going to react? So I challenge and ask you, what are those challenges you face in being held accountable? Especially about the choices you make in life and the choices you make in your family and your relationships, right? And how much of it is you accepting that it's okay, that everything's going to be okay. If I let it be, everything's going to be okay. But then years go by and nothing happens because you still haven't taken it, right? You still haven't taken that ownership for yourself, right? So what are some of the things that you feel are a challenge when overcoming accountability and being held accountable? And I have a quote here from the Crane War that says, if you have not confronted the true horrors, understood evil, suffered hopelessness and despair, found faith, and made yourself completely accountable for your own choices, actions, and outcomes, then I guarantee that any acceptance you pretend to have will be as brittle and temporary as a snowball in the middle of summer. So that little quote speaks some value there, because if you never faced it, if you never had to hold yourself accountable, take accountability for something you've done wrong or something you made a mistake on. And if you never found that solace after taking it and saying, you know what, I know I messed up, but I'm going to be okay. Then just like that quote said, is that acceptance you're going to feel is going to be so temporary, and that guilt's just going to come right back and eat you alive. It's going to be like a snowball in the sun. It's just going to melt away. So what are the challenges you face? What are the challenges that you feel, that you see, right? Whether it's, I want somebody to accept it. I want somebody to forgive me. I owned it. Why aren't they saying they're sorry? Why aren't they saying it's okay? Sometimes, again, like I said, it's not about them. It's about you. It's about getting over the fear about what they're going to think of me, or are they going to ever talk to me again? Sometimes that comes with it. Sometimes it comes with losing those people because you have to. Sometimes it comes with being isolated because you have to, for yourself, for your personal growth, right? To realize, man, I made a mistake, or, I'm going to change the way I speak to people, or how I engage people, my body language, my aggressive tone, or maybe show more love, or maybe not be quick to respond, right? Be quick to listen. So it's being accountable to all those things, to your behaviors. And then again, it's changing that mindset of that's just the way I am. Right? How many of us say that? That's just the way I am. That's just the way I am. I'm aggressive. This is who I am. But how much of that, this is who I am, has hurt relationships, has hurt engagements, career opportunities, right? Because we're not taking accountable for the way we are, right? And looking at the way we are, maybe putting ourselves under a microscope and saying, I don't like this part to me. What do I have to do to make these parts of me a little bit more lovable and likable? It doesn't mean you have to change that aggressive or that protective part of yourself. It's about how you engage and how you speak. Because as I said, when you speak in a tone and you act in a tone and you behave in a way that is not acceptable, words, you can never take those words back. Your actions can never be taken back, because people are going to look at that and be like, but you did it. I saw you. You said it. I know you did. I have it. The proof, whatever, right? It's going to be there. But it's how you engage in those versions of animosity and that hurt. It's owning it, right? It's being accountable for for the things that you did. It's owning it, right? And when we talk about ways to challenges, right? And how do we add some practical tips, right? And some of the things that you can do to kind of overcome those challenges, right? Sometimes it's just self-reflection is one of them for me, reflecting on the things you've done, maybe what you've done and how you've done them in the past and what not to do, right? Having that self-reflection within yourself. Your mindset is key, right? Keeping yourself in check, man. Being true to yourself. Being honest. If you can't be honest and being transparent, you're gonna get caught up in it, right? Using tools. There's a ton of social tools that you can use if you have a therapist. If you have, I know, TikTok, Instagram, they have a lot of things. There's a lot of counselors out there that have their own pages that talk about this, right? Accountability and people pleasing and all that stuff. And it's there. Use the tools that you have right in front of you to kind of help you, prioritize yourself. Make time management key for yourself to kind of get yourself away from a lot of these things, right? Manage your time to ensure that everything that you do is aligning to what you need to do. Look for constructive feedback. If you have that friend or that family member, your kids, your spouse, your partner, someone that you trust, that when you say, look, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's going on, and they give you that constructive criticism, that you're able to analyze it and say, you know what, I'm going to take what you said, although I'm not going to agree with you 100%, but I'm going to take some of what you said and I'm going to ride with it a little bit, right? And start visualizing, all right? Visualize some of those successes that you can do. And then one of the other things is find an accountability partner, like I said, is find someone that's going to hold you accountable, right? Whether it's someone in your church, your community, your sports. If you play basketball, you're one of your best friends that you're really close with, your husband, your wife, your partner, your sibling, brother, sister. Even if your parents, you have parents that are there for you to listen to you, right? And give you good counseling. Have somebody hold you accountable. Even your therapist is good. Find someone to kind of help you kind of get you. There are many more in terms of tips and tricks tips to kind of help you get through some of the challenges and help you cultivate the mindset for accountability. And as I'm coming towards the end of my episode here, and I'm thinking about this topic, like I said, it's been a really crazy week. And I think about my friends, and I think about my family, and I think about life in general, and how I need to be better at holding myself accountable for making time and doing things, and whether it's just a check-in or saying hello, or even just grabbing lunch with someone. That's my goal now, is to kind of make sure I'm holding myself accountable to make time, even if it's for a phone call or text message, or even spending time with my boys, or it's time for myself, right? Making that time to heal and make my time to grow my mindset, and instead of so much focusing on the negative and the stress, of life. Sometimes I'm living in the moment and have to live in the moment and give myself that opportunity. So when you ask yourself some questions, right? What are some of the questions you can ask yourself is, from a personal accountability, is how do you take ownership of your actions and the decisions in your daily life? Ask yourself that. Like, what do I do to take ownership of my actions and the decisions I make every day? And then you talk about overcoming those challenges, right? What are the strategies you use to kind of help you overcome those moments where you need to be accountable or hold someone accountable, right? Let's try both ways. Do you find help in sharing with others? Do you have external support? Is there someone that you can sit with and talk to, right? Understanding the whys and the why nots, and helping you navigate through whatever it is you're going through. Also, it's learning, right? Ask yourself, what's the lesson behind this? What am I going to learn from this? What are the lessons I'm going to take away with me from this experience? Whatever it is. And then creating long and short-term goals. What I don't ever want to happen in the future, and then what I am going to work on today and tomorrow. Creating those goals so that way the mistakes or the flaws you made, or the things that you did, or how you react, or how you engage with people, or how you speak, what are you going to do short-term? Maybe take a step back, maybe listen more, right? Maybe I'm going to just not be quick to respond. Maybe I want to be like, you know what? Okay, I hear you. What are those long and short-term goals when it comes to accepting accountability? And as I close, in this episode, I want to talk about embracing that accountability. Like I said, you got to embrace it, right? You got to own it. You got to take it with you and be like, I need to own this because I need to make sure that I'm good. Not only for yourself, but it's also for your personal growth, because it'll help you and teach you a lesson about how you handle animosity, how you handle situations where it may be out of place for you. And when we talk about holding ourselves accountable, right, for the actions and the decisions we make, what we do is we pave a way for continuous improvement in ourselves, right? We try to improve on ourselves, and our mindset changes, right? It becomes more positive, and the things around us become more positive. Slowly, won't happen overnight. Sometimes that takes time, but it's what you put into it and what you make out of it, right? So that journey of accountability and how you face it always starts with self-reflection, right? As I mentioned in the beginning, it's all about you and learning from those things, and learning from the mistakes that you've probably made, and learning how to adapt to changes, because sometimes the changes and the challenges that comes with it have to be. You may not have that person in your life anymore. You may have to not speak to that person for some time. But it's owning it, right? It's being accountable and self-reflecting on that and those changes, right? But it's also understanding that there's victories with some of these, right? With accountabilities, because like I said, you start with yourself and you start to feel like, oh my God, I need to release this. I need to be able to own it. But at the same time, I need to release and take accountable for my actions, for my responses, for my speech, for my words, right? And we need to cultivate the mindset. Almost had a tongue twister there, right? Cultivate the mindset that sometimes we view as challenges, right? And create those stepping stones and those areas where we're going to come in stages, right? Like those long and short-term goals for personal development and how we grow. And with that, I just want to always set a reminder that accountability is not always it's about meeting expectations, right? It's not about, I did it, I'm good now. It's not always about meeting those expectations. It's about surpassing them, right? So that way, like I said, your future never happens again. These things don't happen again in your future. That right now in the present, what you're facing and what you're taking accountable for, that you're working on those little things that you're trying to get out of, that it never repeats itself for the next version of yourself or the next future version of your family, your relationships, your job, career. Right? And that way you give it your all. And it's at your full potential. It becomes a big win for you, right? Because you start to see and you start to realize, the transparency of being accountable it's better and it's bigger for you. So with that, let's commit to accountability, right? Not so much as a burden or like, oh my God, here he goes again. Now I got to own everything I'm saying. No, don't look at it as a burden. But look at it as a way to enrich and create a pathway to a better you, a better version of you, right? 2024 is here. What are you doing to hold yourself accountable for 2023? So it's behind us, right? 2023 is behind you. What are you doing in 2024 to hold yourself accountable so that way you never repeat the things you did in 2023 or 2022? Or maybe things that you're carrying from 2021 and 2022 into 2023 and now in 2024, maybe they're still on you. What accountability are you taking so that way you become a better person or you have some personal growth, whether that's in your career? And accountability is like maybe not going to school or not giving up on yourself. That automatically you quit when things get a little bit rough. You're like, damn, I just can't do this. I have a really bad relationship with my mom or dad, and I never want to talk to them again. How are you reflecting and looking at those things and conversations, saying, maybe I'll work on it. Again, the solution here is not to do a quick 360 or 180, right? It's to slowly, gradually reflect on those things that you have to own for you, right? And start creating ways. And that's why you always have to have an accountability partner, someone that you can talk to see your version and then maybe give you that constructive criticism or that constructive conversation that you have to listen to. That could be hard. Maybe you're not ready to listen to, but it has to be told, right? And then looking at accountability is like, right, you know what? It starts with me. Because like I said, we sometimes don't want to be wrong. We're always right. You did this to me. I'm never going to talk to you again. You did it. It was all you. But sometimes there's two sides of the story, and there's always your way of handling and responding, right? Sometimes. So my call to action to everyone who's listening to this and what I'd ask of everyone is find yourself someone that you trust, or start looking at yourself and start looking at the things that you are wanting to kind of put to bed, that you own, right? That are yours, that are on your plate. How are you facing that? What are you taking accountability on? It's not about everybody else. It's not about what everybody else did or everybody's doing. It's about what you're doing, right? And owning it. Yeah, maybe you got to hold somebody else accountable for the things they've done to you. Absolutely. But there's also, like I said, what is it that you're doing so that way you're never in this situation? What are you holding yourself accountable to? What have you said? What have you done? What have you missed? Because we are so caught up in pride and ego. And I'm the person. I'm the one they spoke to this way. I'm the one that they hurt to. I'm the one that that I'm not around. They're the ones that don't call me, right? You know, and that's why, like I said, especially with my friendships, it's not about Facebook or Instagram and TikTok to me anymore. Just because you see me and you have access to me doesn't mean that I can't pick up the phone and talk to you, or I can't reach out to you and text you. To me, that's my accountability, is that you have access to me through my social media page, and that should be enough. You should know what I'm doing. But it shouldn't be. It should be that I should be able to, hey, what are you doing this week? You want to meet up for lunch? Let's talk. We haven't caught up in a long time. Oh, hey, let's all meet as a group for dinner. We haven't seen each other in 5-6 years. Or maybe taking your spouse out for dinner. Or maybe just taking her out to dance, or taking him out for a dance. Maybe showing them that you're listening, and hold yourself accountable for forgetting what the relationship's about. Sometimes we get too comfortable and we are not complacent. So maybe we need to realize and hold ourselves accountable for those things. And then our kids, spend time with them. We're so caught up with work and life that we forget about our kids. We forget sometimes that they matter. And then we get home and we're exhausted. We're like, oh my God, you drive me insane. How are you holding yourself accountable as a parent? And then we talk about our siblings, and we talk about our families. What are you doing there? What are you doing in that area where maybe you're in a disagreement, maybe you're in a tough spot, maybe you have a couple of cousins you're not talking to, or you're at ends with your mom and your dad? What are you doing there to hold yourself accountable for that situation? Maybe it's not your fault. You're right. Maybe you didn't do anything wrong. But have you analyzed it? Have you looked at it? Have you had someone who can give you that constructive feedback, tell you, yeah, maybe you need to kind of just ease up a little bit? So that's my call to action to you all, is to kind of take this moment, 2024, to look at life, and really appreciate those around you and what you have. And really sometimes, like I said, accountability sometimes is like, yeah, maybe I did say something, do something wrong. And you may never talk to the person again, or see this person, or see the situation ever again for what it was. But at least from a personal growth and from a self-reflection, you feel so much better. And you can consider that a W. And you win, because you know what? You're not going to ever put yourself in a situation where you're going to feel the way you feel, right? And I hope that this episode has shed some light and kind of helped give some guidance there. Like I said, I'm not a professional nor a doctor, but I talk about my life experiences and how I handle things and how I face life, right? But I want to also, like I said, take a moment to thank you all for listening. Thank you all for following, sending me messages. And if you haven't followed me, please follow me on @pod on Instagram, or @podcast on TikTok. Also, you can shoot me an email with any thoughts, anything you want to hear, or anything you want to be on the show. Please send me an email at @pod@gmail.com. I want to thank you all for listening. And as always, I want to put a plug in to a small business or a podcaster. And this time I want to throw in a small business plug to my boy Troy and his brother. They have a spiced rum business, Devil's Reef. They're going to be coming to a liquor store near you soon. But if you want to try it, it's really good. You can go to Devil's Reef's website. I'll tag it to my post on Instagram as well as TikTok. Give them a follow. If you like the spiced rum, go ahead, give it a purchase. Really good guys, starting a venture there in the spiced rum business. So definitely give them a shout. Thank you again, mi gente, my people. Until next time, Carlos, peace.